This is a video response I wanted to make a long time ago, but have never gotten around to actually doing, until now. The reason I want to address it is simple. The video in question gets so many things wrong, and if there's something I can't stand, it's misinformation. To the author's credit, he later did acknowledge that several points he made in the video were wrong and issued a correction. But since I'm an asshole, I'll refute them anyways. The title of the original video is Why the Blue Yeti Sucks. Blue Yeti being a popular USB microphone. I don't necessarily have an issue with such a blanket statement. After all, for roughly the same price, you can get a better sounding setup. The problem is with the reasoning the author of the video uses to support his conclusions. Let's dive right in.
Allow me to demonstrate. My name's Ouija the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments. My name's Ouija the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments. Now you notice how this sounds all nice and clean and clear? And how this sounds like absolute total garbage? Well, that right there is the difference between a toy and a real audio setup.
So far, so good. You can clearly hear that the Yeti sound quality isn't all that great. We'll get into the reason why later.
Now here's the thing that's really gonna blow your mind. This goes a whole lot deeper than just the Yeti specifically, as all USB microphones, yes, all of them, I'm gonna say it one more time because if you take anything away from this video, I want it to be this, all USB microphones are very, very bad.
Whoa there. All of them? That's quite a claim, mister. Any evidence to back it up?
Well, that's only half true, actually. You see, it isn't necessarily that companies don't create quote-unquote good USB microphones, it's that the overall nature of USB technology alone simply cannot produce a high level of quality. For those of you who don't know how recording things with a microphone works, the mic picks up sound waves and converts them into digital audio information recognizable by your computer via your sound card of choice, and therein lies the overarching issue, the sound card. In the case of USB microphones, it's the embedded sound card of the motherboard that handles the converting. But here's the kicker. These embedded sound cards aren't all that good at their jobs when it comes to actual quality. Of course, some embedded sound cards are technically more powerful and better than others, but the difference in quality between them is honestly so marginal that you're not even going to be able to detect any improvement. The same exact thing can be said for the hardware connected to them as well. Manufacturers of USB microphones have to intentionally limit just how good their mics are allowed to be in order to be compatible with a wide variety of these embedded sound cards. This leads to almost every single USB microphone out there having extremely similar lackluster hardware specs, resulting in an almost identical sound across the board.
Oh, stop, this is painful. Okay, let's go through this slowly and point by point. USB microphones do not rely on the sound card. In fact, your computer might not even have a sound card at all, and you can still connect a USB microphone to it. This is the whole point of a USB microphone. Let's talk about how sound works and how it gets into a computer. What we perceive as sound is vibration propagated through a medium, usually air. The first step of digitizing sound is to convert varying air pressure into electrical signal. Since the resulting signal is too low, it needs to be amplified. Next, it gets processed by an ADC, analog to digital converter, to convert it from analog to digital. A USB microphone contains all the circuitry to do all of that. If you connect a microphone to the mic input of your sound card, then and only then do you rely on the sound card to amplify and digitize the signal coming from the microphone. And no, manufacturers do not have to nerf the sound quality to be compatible with all sound cards. A sound card expects an analog signal of a certain amplitude, and it doesn't care if it's coming from a high-quality microphone or a shitty, no-brand electrolyte capsule. Now, it's sort of true that the difference between an average built-in sound card and a more expensive one when it comes to recording usually isn't that noticeable. But that's because the sound card is rarely the weakest link in the whole chain. The microphone itself is by far the most important element. It doesn't matter how good the ADC is, when the signal it has to work with is shit.
So if the Blue Yeti is too technologically weak to be a viable studio mic and far too expensive to be a viable casual mic, then what is the target market for this thing? If you answered gullible people who don't know any better and rely way too much on groupthink and brand recognition, then congratulations! You would be correct.
Oh, the irony. Yeah, someone who thinks that USB microphone uses the sound card built into the computer is exactly the kind of person to tell others that they don't know any better.
To make a long description very short, an audio interface is a box with XLR connectors on one end and a USB connector on the other, which you use to plug into your computer.
Didn't you say before that USB, by its very nature, is incompatible with high-quality sound?
The overall nature of USB technology alone simply cannot produce a high level of quality.
The reason why this piece of hardware is so important is because it features a dedicated analog to digital converter, meaning that any sound going through it is going to be of a demonstrably higher quality than any embedded sound card is able to produce.
Oh, an analog to digital converter chip? Well, guess what else has an analog to digital chip? A USB microphone and a sound card. Oh, and about that dedicated bit. Usually the ADC is not a dedicated chip. Most, if not all, audio interfaces and USB microphones don't have a separate ADC chip. ADC is a part of a big chip that also handles USB communications and other stuff. This makes it cheaper to produce without sacrificing audio quality. As for the chip you showed, well, I guess you could use it to digitize sound if you really wanted to, even though that's not what it's designed for. Its sample rate is more than adequate, but the problem is that its resolution is only 10-bit. For comparison, many cheap USB sound cards are based on the CM108 chip that has a 16-bit ADC. A 16-bit ADC has a 64 times higher resolution than a 10-bit one.
While you can plug your mic straight into your interface, it is strongly recommended, especially for quieter microphones like condensers and ribbons, that you first run it through a preamp. A preamp, again to make a long description very short, is a box with both male and female XLR connectors that boost the input of your microphone in a proficient way, resulting in a lower noise floor and a much cleaner sound.
Compared to what? Also, audio interface already has a preamp built in. If your microphone is too quiet when plugged into the audio interface directly, then there's probably something wrong with your setup. Also, I should point out that when you cascade several amplifiers, you increase the noise floor. Each amplifier adds some noise, so the more of them you daisy chain, the worse it gets. Granted, it's not as dramatic as it might sound at first. Having two amplifiers in series doesn't double the noise level. The first stage is the one contributing the most to the noise. Nevertheless, it's still a good idea to avoid unnecessary amplification stages. Just out of curiosity, I looked up the specs of one of the audio interfaces you recommended, Steinberg UR22 Mark II. Apparently, its microphone gain can be adjusted from +10 to +54 dB. If +54 dB is still too quiet, then there is something not right with your microphone. Now let's talk about the real reason why the Blue Yeti sounds so bad. It has nothing to do with it being a USB microphone. To get the answer, we need to take a look inside. Here you can see 3 condenser capsules. Why 3? That's because Blue Yeti can be configured as a cardioid, omnidirectional or bidirectional microphone by utilizing one or more of these capsules. The problem is that they are quite small, and as the result they have certain limitations. This type of microphone is called a condenser. Condenser capsule consists of a diaphragm that vibrates with the sound and a static plate. They form a capacitor that changes its value depending on the distance between the diaphragm and the plate. Since this capacitor holds a charge, this change of capacitance causes fluctuation of voltage differential between the plate and the diaphragm. The problem is that the capacitance of a capsule is tiny, in the order of picofarads, and the smaller the capsule, the lower the capacitance. This means that in order to get a useful signal from a smaller capsule, a microphone needs a higher gain preamp, which introduces more noise. Moreover, a physically small capsule is not very good at picking up lower frequencies. This is the main reason for the low sound quality. On the left, you can see the spectrum plot of this sample.
My name's Ouija the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments.
Whereas on the right of this one,
My name's Ouija the God, and I spend 14 hours a day watching Family Guy funny moments.
as you can see, the low frequency response of the Yeti is pretty piss poor. This shouldn't come as a surprise, since the frequency response graphs provided by the manufacturer clearly show that Yeti isn't very sensitive to bass. Before we finish, there's one more thing worth noting. Turns out that Ouija Plays, the author of the masterpiece I'm dissecting, Jacqueline Glent a piece of someone else's video, word for word. Here's a clip courtesy of Lyle McDouchebag that shows it.
I just found some motherfucking shenanigans. Check this out.
I'm here to tell you the Blue Yeti is a $100 stainless steel toy. Everything good you heard about it, forget it. They're lies born from hobbyists with no concept of quality. This is...
Alright. Check the date. Boom. Now, compare it to this date. This guy.
So here's the truth. The Blue Yeti is a $100 stainless steel toy. Everything good you heard about it, forget it. They're lies born from hobbyists with no concept of quality.
The same words? You're gonna use the same fucking words? Dude!
Anyways, I hope this was at least somewhat informative. See you next time!